Welcome to car birding in Rhode Island and beyond. My name is Barbara Scythe, and this is a repeat of the presentation I did for Birdability Week in 2025. The image on the screen shows a peaceful road scene at sunrise. The sky is filled with warm shades of orange, pink, and hints of blue. Just a little bit about me before we get started. My name again is Barbara Scythe. I'm the Rhode Island Birdability Captain. I've been birding for about 6 years, and I would say about 75% of that has been car birding, locally, traveling in the US, Canada, and South Africa. And my pronouns are she, her. This image captures a joyful moment of me, a senior woman with curly white hair, sitting in an open safari vehicle. I'm flashing a warm, genuine smile that conveys delight and contentment. Resting beside me is my camera pointed at the African savanna of Kruger National Park in South Africa. Bathed in golden sunlight that highlights the dry grass, sparse distant trees, and a clear blue sky above. So let's get on it. Who, what, where, when, and how slides all have this particular image. It captures a tranquil, winding road early in the morning. I'm driving a car with a large flock of blackbirds above it. It is autumn, and the leaves on either side of the road are changing to red, brown, and yellow. So, who should carbird? Well, that's an easy one. Everybody. So, what is carbirding? Well, it's not this. Yes, this can happen when you're carbirding, but this image shows black vultures foraging on the top of a car, a white stork looking in the driver's side window of a blue car, and a pileated woodpecker perched on a car side mirror. Although this might happen while carbirding, it's not what we mean by carbirding. It's more like this. It is seeing birds close up on the side of the road. These images show what carbirding is. A greater white-fronted goose amidst a flock of Canadian geese, a ringneck pheasant running along the road, mixed egrets and a great blue heron in a marsh, and a lovely glen in the woods on the side of the road. I should say that unless I say otherwise, all the photos you see in this presentation today are mine and are taken from the car. So when do you carbird? Again, that's easy. Anytime. I find that it's great in the winter when it's cold and you really, really don't want to get out of the car. But it's also pretty good in summer and anytime when you want to get close to birds, but you don't want to scare them away. So what I do is I park my car somewhere and then I wait for the birds to come to me. So where should you carbird? Well, that's the key. And I'm going to talk a lot about how to find a spot. So the image on this screen is from the Misquamicut State Beach parking lot in Rhode Island. It shows a segment of rainbow against a backdrop of gray, cloudy sky. Below the sky, there is a small pond, grass, a guardrail, and a road with woods against the road. I have to say, sadly, that they're ripping some of this up because they're trying to make more entry lanes for the beach. So that's my sad story for this winter. I will have to find some other place to go. But anyway, I can do that. It just takes some recon and research. So local places that you might want to check out would be things like cemeteries, which tend to have roads that go all the way through them, but they have a fair amount of natural habitat as well. Parking lots, so things like what I'm showing you on this screen. It's an open parking lot, but maybe has some edge habitat scattered around the outside of the lot. Ocean lookouts and beaches are great, and often if they're overlooks, you can park there and just look at the ocean. Fields, coves, ponds, marshes, woodsy roads, often as approaches to trails, which I'll talk about in a little bit again. roads in wildlife refuges and state parks, and places with varied habitat, which means you'll get that little edge habitat, which is always great for birds. Now, finding places when you travel can be a little more challenging, but we'll talk about that too. Um, eBird is really helpful, reviewing that map, taking a look at the satellite image so you can see if there's edge habitat there. Using finding bird books as opposed to a field guide. Scenic drives, there's a ton of them all over the country, and they're usually fairly productive for birds. Pull-offs from busy roads and parking areas, and then I'll show you how to use Google Maps to help you evaluate places to carbird. So, in case you don't know Rhode Island, it's the smallest state in the union. It's got great different habitats. There's coastal habitats, so ocean lookouts and beaches. There's coves, ponds and marshes, some freshwater, but a lot of brackish ones. Inland, there's swamps. We have the biggest swamp in New England and Rhode Island called the Great Swamp. We've got ponds and streams. We have fields. We have lots of edge habitat, so that's between like a wood and a field or a road and a woods, and we have woodlands. So as you go sort of north in the state, you get more forest, you get more mountainous and hills and such. So what I did in preparing for this was I took a look at my 6 odd years of birding, and I identified the places that I visited by car, and looked at the number of species I had in each of those different habitats. So my number one habitat was marshes, and I'm going to take a look at each of these individual habitats, or the top five anyway, just to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about when I say a marsh or a woodsy road. This happens to be marshy habitat, as does. This image is of snowy egrets and greater yellowlegs at a marsh. I've logged 275 species in marshes in Rhode Island, so there's a good number of marsh habitats near the road here and a nice rotation of species during the season. The fabled woodsy road. So this image is of a woodsy dirt road that has a wide shoulder of grass, a drainage swale, and deep woods. This road is the road to the Great Swamp. The trail is long and challenging, so I just bird the road in, which is lovely and has yielded good birds. The grass and swale push the woods back from the road and make this road more productive. I've seen 209 species on woodsy roads in Rhode Island. Then we have a pond habitat. This image is of an American bittern amidst the Phragmites in Mud Pond, which is part of a national wildlife refuge. I've seen 203 different species in this type of pond habitat, but recently a lot of the ponds in the area have been very high, which actually limits the species you'll see. Mud flats on the side of a pond yield the best birds, and the water level lately has been too high for even the smaller dabbling ducks. Then we've got the parking lot habitat. And this image shows several gulls in the parking lot, featuring a lesser blackback gull, a ring-billed gull, and a blurry herring gull in the back. Many of our lots in Rhode Island are beach parking lots, which often yield shorebirds as well as gulls and terns. Last year, my lifer northern lapwings showed up first in a beach parking lot. And the last habitat I'm going to talk about is the Ocean Lookout. Now, this happens to be Ocean Drive in Newport, Rhode Island. It's has a very expansive view of the ocean with rocky outcroppings and plenty of room on the side of the road to pull off. I've had 151 species while carbirding at different ocean lookouts across the state. Here you will not only see gulls, cormorants, loons, and terns, but also shorebirds and grebes and the occasional pelagic bird, like a northern gannet. This image is a map of Rhode Island depicting a distance-based heat map of the Dunkin' Donuts stores using concentric orange rings centered around multiple points. Proximity to coffee when you're car birding is key. This image captures a quiet rural road winding through a lush green forest. The road is narrow and gently curving with a paved surface. On both sides of the road, tall trees dominate, um, displaying a mix of green foliage and some early autumn colors on the verge of seasonal transition. The view is from inside my vehicle. Now, picking a good woodsy road, you want to consider the following things. A variety of habitat, which you'll see as we sort of move up this road. There's a waterfall and a creek. There's some fields. There's lots of woods. There's some glens. Um, it's not a well-trafficked road. In fact, it's hardly trafficked at all. You'll find more walkers on here than drivers. So limited traffic, ideal. Places to pull off just in case somebody comes by. You want to think about, do you feel safe? I mean, this is a pretty isolated road, so just got to make sure that you're comfortable, you're going to be okay. And then good visibility into the different habitats, which this has as well. And this road is called Ponegannzit Road. It's in Foster, Rhode Island. This image is a satellite map showing a predominantly forested area with a body of water at the roadside. The winding road stretches vertically across the map, and a red dot is positioned near the lower right corner, indicating the beginning of the road. And we're actually going to travel this road twice. So just to give you a concept of where it is, the image previously described of the Rhode Island map with the red dot indicates where Ponegannzit Road is. It is near the Ponegannzit Reservoir in the northeast of the center of the state, away from the coast. So throughout the next section, we'll move along Ponegannzit Road. The map of the road I just described is in the background. There's a red dot on the map that indicates where we are on the road. And when I talk about the birds or landscape images, we will be moving northeast along the road. The beginning of the road is good for warblers, like the images of the cerulean warbler that graced us this spring, along with its mate, and a magnolia warbler, which we see almost every year. We've moved northwest up the road, and the image from the car shows an arrow pointing to a glen on the right side of the road. This habitat is good for woodpeckers, like the image of the yellow-bellied sapsucker. We've moved northwest along the road, past the stream and up a hill to an area in an image of low brush, which gives us good habitat for many passerines, like the image of the orchard oriole. Further northwest along the road, I'm showing an image of the cemetery, which provides a man-made glen type of habitat, and the birds love to perch on the headstones, as well as flit along the side of the cemetery, the perimeter. As we continue along northwest on the road, on the shore of the reservoir, the image shows the water with a bit of fog on the other side and a perfect tree line for perching raptors, like the bald eagle in the second image. Up the road and a small hill, the image is of a more natural, rustic, older cemetery. Most of the headstones are from the 1800s. It also creates somewhat of a glen. There are a few trees sprinkled around the cemetery and a natural floor. These trees are magnets for woodpeckers, like the pileated woodpecker featured in the second image. Further up the hill, the image shows low brush and a glen with high trees in the back. This is one of my favorite spots on the road. And among the many birds I've seen there is shown in the other image of my lifer yellow-billed cuckoo. At the top of the hill, there's a farm and several fields that flank the road. The image shows the field and a farming area to the west of the road. A second image shows a male rose-breasted grosbeak that was hanging out in the lovely edge habitat where the field meets the trees. At the end of the road, the image is labeled Deep Woods. There are fairly dense trees that continue as far as I can see. I've seen a number of raptors flying through this woods, including the barred owl in the second image. On other occasions, a great horned owl, Coopers, red-shouldered, and red-tailed hawks. Now we're going to take a tour. And to do that, we need to go into Google Maps to the approximate location where we want to look. This is Pontiganza Road that we just went up, and I'm going to click right here just to put us at the foot of the road. And what you need to look for is this little window down here that says Street View, or doesn't say Street View, but has that little circular arrow, which indicates that there's a 360 view there. So if I click on that, it takes us right onto the road. Now I'm looking back down at where we would start, but I can do a 360 so I can kind of see what's on the sides. And then we can just start traveling up the road. And this is a great way to take in what you might see if you were to drive the road. Now here you can see, oops, I'm gonna come back a little bit. Here you can see there's a little path off here that gives you some visibility into the forest. And we just passed a little turnoff. You can see it's pretty much deep woods on both sides here. But when you get a little further up, it opens up a little bit. Even here, it's opening up a little bit, but I want to go right here. Let's see if it'll let me. And you can see that there's like a little glen in there that you can see further in. And these bushes here are great for passerines and such. This is actually an exit to a road that I never go up because it's really noisy up there. And I do a lot of birding by ear, and I can't hear anything there. And the reason it's noisy is because there's a waterfall, which if I can do this slightly, we might be able to see. But sometimes, oh yeah, so this is the spillway from the waterfall, but there's a big waterfall and dam right there, and it does some hydroelectric power stuff. But this is a nice place for water thrushes and sometimes phoebes and other flycatchers. And then we're going, and there's another glen that you can look into, an artificial one, but one nonetheless. And up here at the top of the road, this has got some low brush, so it's really good for those passerines that we talked about earlier. And we're going to continue along and come down here to the man-made cemetery, which gives us all this lovely edge habitat on the side. And it's obviously a groomed cemetery, so they mow it. There's flowers planted here and things like that. So less, natural, but still a nice place to bird. And then the woods sort of closes in on us again. But you can see over here a little bit that there's some water on the left-hand side. So in the winter, we see ducks and sometimes some raptors across the way. This is a great area for woodpeckers too. Let's see if it'll let me land here now. So this is a nice pull off where you can just sort of pull off and kind of sit in the woods. I've had pileated woodpeckers there, beautiful views of them actually. And now we're going around a corner, following along the reservoir here. And because it's a reservoir, it's not available for recreational activities. So there's not a lot of activity on this road. It's fairly lightly traveled. And there's a little window here and there. And as you can see, it was a minute ago, kind of spring. And now, for some reason, the film they've chosen to show us, or the 3D view they've chosen to show us, is actually in winter. But I think that's kind of cool that you actually get to see the road in a couple of different seasons. So even in winter, this is a fairly good road. Lots of woodpeckers, lots of other wintering birds, blue jays, crows, other raptors. Did I say woodpeckers already? I may have. And we're just about to get to another cemetery, but this is a really different cemetery. And I can never tell how fast this thing is going. So sometimes it takes a little time to get adjusted to this, to make it work exactly the way you want it to. Okay, so this is the cemetery up here. So let's see if I can, yeah, there we go. So you can see the headstones in there, but this is a much more natural cemetery. It's not really maintained. So you're going to get more ground birds here, more natural ground birds. These trees in here are great for woodpeckers and such. And in the spring, this is a great road for warblers. And over here, lots of thrushes, hermit thrushes, wood thrushes, even an occasional Swainson's thrush. All right, so we're going to continue up. If you remember what we talked about a little while ago in the last section when I was taking you through stills up this road, there are different kinds of birds all along this road, and it's only, I'm going to say, like a mile and a half, so it's not a really long, although it's fairly winding, road. So on the way up here is one of my favorite spots. I think I can go one more, maybe one more, which is over in here. And this is kind of a glen sort of area. Lots of high trees in the back, but some lower brush in the front. That's where I had the my lifer yellow-billed cuckoo. And up here a little further, we come on the farm fields. See, all of a sudden this is going really slowly, and I don't know if it's because of where I'm clicking or what, but so there's a farmhouse over here. Often get cedar waxwings along with puppies on this road, but you've got some farm fields and some great edge habitat in the back and even edge habitat in the front. So I usually spend a while sitting here watching the trees and such. I get raptors in this part of the field and over on this side. That might even be a raptor flying right there. And it almost looks actually like we're coming on spring now. So maybe this is a little bit different, different timing on this 360 view as well. So as we come down this hill, usually both sides of it are fairly productive. Sometimes I like to stop down here in the bottom and look into this woods, but also look up onto this field, which by the end of the summer is extremely thick with brush and such. This is another place we've seen cerulean warblers a couple of times. So, oops, I don't know what I did there. I went backwards by mistake. So I'm trying to take this corner and it doesn't seem to want to let me. It's like learning to drive a different car, I think. All right, here we go. We're going up the hill again. Nope, we're going down the hill again. So I'm not sure what happened here, but it does not seem to want, oh, there we go. Okay, so now we're going up the hill towards the end of the road. We're almost at the end of the road. A grove of pine trees here. That's usually. The image is a map of Rhode Island with a red dot that indicates the Watch Hill Lighthouse, which is located in the southwesternmost point in Rhode Island. The image shows a route down a peninsula with a parking lot and a lighthouse, and the open ocean is to the south and east, and a more protected bay to the west. There's a red line indicating the route for car burning. This image is repeated on all the subsequent slides for the Watch Hill Lighthouse. The red dot indicates that these images were taken in the private residential part of the road. The view from the car shows a large hedge on the left, an artistic fence around a yard on the right with the bay in the distance. There is an image of the gray kingbird, a rarity, which showed up here a few falls ago, and a Lincoln sparrow, which showed up just a few weeks ago. The red dot is moved to the causeway to the lighthouse. One image shows close-up view of the bay and a distant view of the lighthouse. The other image is a mixed flock of ducks, including a surf scoter, common eiders, and a female king eider. Now we have a view from the parking lot for the lighthouse. One image shows the lot, the lighthouse, a guardrail, a field, and the ocean in the distance. And there are three other photos of what we call the Misquamicut trifecta. Mixed flocks of these birds, horned lark, snow bunting, and an occasional Lapland longspur, move between the state beach and this lighthouse. The birds are shown foraging in the grass. This first image shows the parking lot, but facing the ocean where the waves curl in and a fisherman casts his line. Images include purple sandpipers foraging on the rocks, and a flock of surf scoters bobbing in the water, and a black scoter calmly floating in the rain on a day I was happy to be carbirding. We've moved into the back parking lot that faces Napatree Point, the furthest western point in Rhode Island. The image has a small field, an area of brush, the bay, and cabanas on the beach across the bay. Another image shows a harlequin duck in flight over the bay, and the final image shows a lark sparrow that visited the area a few weeks ago. Back in the main parking lot, but this time we're facing north towards Watch Hill, there was an image of razorbills and another one of some long-tailed ducks, which are frequent visitors. If we were lucky, we might even have a rare sighting of a swift at the top of the hill, specifically Taylor. She owns the large white house on the hill with the rock wall that descends to the ocean. Um, Shown in the final image. There is an orange circle on the map that indicates where her house is. Rumor has it this is a potential site for her upcoming wedding. This is the last place I'm going to show you in Rhode Island. It's called Nenegrit Wildlife Refuge, and it's, again, the map of Rhode Island with the red dot. Nenegrit Wildlife Refuge is about 10 miles up the coast from Watch Hill. The background image is an aerial map of the entrance to the Nenegrit Wildlife Reserve. It seems like a small area, only about 1/10 of a mile, but very productive. I've seen over 100 species here, um, including a black-throated green warbler, a prairie warbler, a blue-headed vireo, black and white warbler, a veery, American woodcock. So now we're going to talk about what to think about when you're planning a carbirding excursion, whether it's at home or somewhere else. Are there specific bird species you want to see? It's a good idea to know what those are first and then pick your carbirding habitat based on that. The successful carbirding needs research and planning, and there are different ways to research. eBird species maps and hotspot bar charts are very helpful. Time of day can be really important. So if you know the time that birds usually show up in a particular hotspot, that can be critical. And these birds are creatures of habit. If you find a good habitat, even if your bird has not been reported, it might be there. So if you aren't sure where to go, look for the edge habitat, and Google Maps can help. The background image here is Ventura Harbor in California, and it captures a serene sunset scene with clear sky transitioning from deep blue on the left to soft orange and pink hues near the horizon on the right. Silhouettes of palm trees and other trees frame the lower part of the image, and in the distant background, low mountain ranges can be faintly seen. Overall, this next image serves as a collage of books that will help you find a location in Maine, Florida, Connecticut, Pasadena, southeastern Arizona, and Southern California. It's really important when you're looking for a bird finding guide that you don't make the mistake and get a field guide. These guides are hard, aren't published all that often anymore, which I think is a shame because I find them much more useful than eBird. Because if to use eBird, you kind of have to know where you're going already. And this really is telling you where to go to find certain birds, not necessarily what birds have been there recently. So I think the most recent one of these guides is the Bird Watching in Maine guide, which was just reissued, I believe, last year. Some of these books go back to the early 2000s. Some of them were printed in the teens or 2011. But I just think that for some reason they've decided we don't need these books anymore, and they're actually my favorite kind of book. They're not a field guide. They tell you where to find the birds, not what birds are in the state. They have very rich location descriptions. You can tell kind of how dated they are because usually they have turn by turn directions and not um, specific addresses so you can use a GPS. And it really does help you assess the accessibility of the site. And for me, the birdability of the site. So I'm going to take you to a couple of other places that have been really productive for me in car birding and show you sort of what to expect there. This is an image from the Black Point Wildlife Drive in Merritt Island, Florida. It is a mixed flock of dowitchers, both short-billed and long-billed. So when you put Black Point Wildlife Drive into Google Maps, it kind of lands you here in the middle of the drive. So I'd really like to start in the beginning of the drive. So I'm just going to click down here. And again, you see I have this street view option, which is lovely. It means I can do this virtual tour. So I'm going to click on that and kind of turn us around a little bit. And we're going to head down the road or up the road, depending on how you look at it. You can see this, it's got these great swales on the side of the road. Like here and here, and there's tons of bird life in there. I'm going to go pretty quickly here because you kind of get the idea of your ability. There's a nice pull off there to just see what the habitat looks like. This has a date of January 2023, and actually I was here in January of 2023. And the day I was here, we had tons of birds. I'm gonna actually see if I can get out of this for a minute. And I'm gonna go a little further down the drive. Let's kind of go in here to maybe see a little bit of different habitat. So you see it's widening out here. You got more ponding versus just the swales on the side of the road. Um, it's a much broader view here because there's less trees right next to the road, which is kind of nice. I think we're coming up on a fairly large body of water over here, which should yield some good birds. Now, you can see here, there's really no birds. So I don't know if the explanation for that is that it's the time of day, which this doesn't tell me when it is. But I've been here twice, and both times it was very, very birdy. So just gonna kind of take a quick swing around here like this. Also, usually on the page there's an opportunity to look at photos, and some of the times those photos will show you um, the level of bird activity there. In fact, probably the maximum bird activity, because that's going to be the most likely time to take a photo. But you get the idea. You can do this on a lot of different places in the United States. You just have to look for that. This little down here in the right-hand corner, that little circle with the arrow on it, because that's the indicator that there's a 360 view and usually the ability to follow it down the road. In Merritt Island, Florida, also found a number of blue-winged teals, and as you can see, the image shows a pair very, very close. This next image is of black skimmers and laughing gulls, mostly black skimmers and a lot of them. And this was just along the way on the wildlife drive. saw an inordinate number of white birds. So not only what this image shows, which is snowy egrets and white ibis, but also great egrets and some younger little blue herons. Sorry, I went fast there. We're back to that mixed flock of dowitchers again, but they're all in flight at this point. And another place in Florida that was really lovely to drive and very productive. In fact, I liked it so much I did it twice. It's my favorite wildlife drive ever. It's called Lake Apopka in Florida. I liked it so much I did it twice. Didn't realize that one loop wouldn't cover it all. At one point, you have to make a choice, and so I went back and did it again. Um, to make sure I covered the whole thing. Very nice close up spots. In fact, the day I went, it was actually raining, which was awesome because not as many people were there. The biggest negative about it is that it's only open Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays, sometimes on holidays. So it's yeah, be nice if you could go every day of the week. So some of the birds that I saw in Lake Apopka, very close, as you can see, all from the car because you're not even supposed to get out of your car unless you're at a regular stop. Gray-headed swamp hen, a whole passel of American coots, a flock of black-bellied whistling ducks, and fulvous whistling ducks. And a couple more great car birding spots in Florida. Huguenot Memorial City Park in Jacksonville, where you can actually drive on the beach. It's very flat and very stable. Um, you just have to be conscious of the tide because it does come in pretty quickly because it's so flat. And that's represented here by a picture of black skimmers and royal terns in number. And then another place that I found just because I was watching eBird and I thought it might be an interesting place to go in addition to being visited by a whooping crane while I was down there. So that was very fun. But this whole Joe Overstreet Road in Osceola, Florida, had caracaras, had sandhill cranes all along the way, tons of meadowlarks and other field birds. It was really quite a lovely drive. And some other places not in Florida, but these are drives, great drives in wildlife refuges, is the Edwin B. Forsyth National Wildlife Refuge in Atlantic, New Jersey, which has an elevated berm that goes all around this great marsh habitat. The picture here is of hundreds, but there were thousands of snow geese taking flight in the reservoir. And also Bombay Hook National Wildlife Refuge in Delaware, another great wildlife drive. The picture here is hundreds of American avocets in a pond, along with some northern shovelers and a few other kinds of ducks, I think. Um, Sort of in the other side of the country in New Mexico, there is a wildlife management area called Bernardo Wildlife Management Area. And there's a photo of probably about 30 sandhill cranes, but there were actually more like 6,000 of them there. And you were just among them. The sounds they make were incredible. And also drove through flocks and flocks of snow geese and Ross's geese as well. It's a little north of its more famous cousin, which is the Bosque del Apache National Wildlife Refuge. But honestly, it was a different experience, but a one that was well worth driving about 30 miles north for. Um, and then that brings us to Bosque del Apache, which is represented in these images. Um, I had what I consider one of my best mornings of birding ever. The last day I was in New Mexico, we went back to Bosque del Apache to watch the morning liftoff of the snow geese and the cranes. But then we went quickly to see if we could find the white-tailed kite that had been reported there, and we not only found one of them, we found two and had some good time with them. And then the guide was like, "We gotta go." because we're going to be late if we don't. So we're not going to stop anymore. And I don't know about you, but in my experience, whenever a guide says that, you know you're about to see something spectacular and he's going to have to stop. So this is what we saw. My cousin pointed out the bald eagle that was flying amidst probably 500 or 600 ducks. It was a mixed flock, pintails, some mallards, a few other things. The bald eagle actually grabbed one of the pintails and had it for breakfast. But as that was happening, these huge mixed flock of blackbirds, and I'm going to say there were thousands of birds there. Red-winged blackbirds, some brewer's blackbirds, some common, some kind of grackle too, I think. Um, and then we drove a little further and happened upon a huge flock of snow geese with a few sandhill cranes and a coyote. So, and this is with never getting out of the car. So, something special. So, why should you car bird? Well, consider this. This image is of Hudson Ranch Road in California, north of Pasadena. The foreground is dominated by tall beige grasses swaying gently. The middle ground reveals rolling hills with its sparse vegetation transitioning to more mountainous terrain in the background. The sky is clear with just a few streaks of clouds. Now, I went here hunting condors, but alas, either I was too late for the afternoon thermals or the Santa Ana winds were already kicking in. The second image shows my constellation California quail perched on a barbed wire fence. So, when you're thinking about whether or not you should carbird, consider the fact that you definitely are going to cover a larger area than you would if you were on foot. It's reduced physical strain and risk of injury, less wildlife disturbance, and it can be easily observed at a close range from a vehicle than on foot. The vehicle is almost like a bird blind if you're not moving towards the bird. Um, Hopefully, you're comfortable and feel safe in your car. And last but not least, continuous access to coffee and food. So how do you car bird? Which is probably why you guys all came to this presentation to begin with. So the car is key. This image shows the back of my blue Subaru Forester Hybrid. Notable decals on the rear of the car include the word coexist, represented by different diverse religious symbols on the right, gulls in flight on the left, and an I brake for birds with a bird in flight decal on the bottom left. There is a magnet with a piping plover on the trunk and an osprey on the license plate. Clearly, this car belongs to a birder. And I find actually the Brake for Birds sticker is really important because a lot of times people will stop and ask you if you're okay. And I can't tell you how many times I've missed the bird because their freaking car is in front of me. So having the I brake for bird sign kind of gives them a clue. If you've got your bins up or your camera up, hopefully they'll just go right by. So the image are two angles from the front seat of my car. There is a phone holder at the top of the dashboard and my iPad to the left of the phone. My binoculars are in the binodock that fits into a cup holder to keep them at the ready. The second image is of my passenger seat. It contains a wooden box with a black foam lining the two compartments. The front compartment contains my camera, which has a zoom lens and a pair of gloves. The back compartment has a small scope with a holder that attaches to my car window. This I my stepbrother, my brother-in-law built this box for me, but before he did, I actually constructed one from an Amazon box out of cardboard, and quite honestly, it worked just fine. So, it's just helpful to be able to have sort of two compartments in your front seat. And I when I pick people up, sometimes I make them travel in the back seat so I don't have to move my equipment. Anyway, beyond this, you might want to think about a beanbag for your camera on the window. Sort of works as well as a tripod and definitely better than trying to balance the camera on the window itself. Um, Snacks and water, Printed road atlas or download Google Maps in advance. I failed to do that when I was up in the Hudson Ranch Road in California, thinking, oh, it's California, I'll have service everywhere. Well, I did not. And it's really not hard to download Google Maps. There's great instructions on the internet. So if you're going any place like the Sky Mountains in Arizona or somewhere that might not have cellular service, I highly recommend it. A phone charger, a winter survival or emergency roadside kit so you don't get stuck somewhere, and bins, camera, and scope in easy reach, because the last thing you want to do is open that car door, because then your blind is not a blind anymore. So, some best practices for car birding. Your vehicle should have good visibility. It's one of the reasons I love the Subaru Forester. It is very open and sort of square. So a lot of cars have very pitched windshields, and that's not great for car birding. Maneuverability, comfort. I mean, that's why we car bird, right? To be more comfortable. Fuel efficiency is a good idea, and having terrain capability is also a good idea. So I should say this image showcases a rugged mountain range with exposed rock formations under a clear blue sky. At the base of the mountains, there is a stretch of green vegetation and a small white house in the foreground. And that small white house was actually the B&B I stayed in when I went to the Chiricahua Mountains in Arizona. So it was pretty spectacular. Continuing best practices that are not the vehicle: drive slowly and stop quietly. I recently got my hybrid, and I have to highly recommend it for car birding. If that's something you're going to do on a regular basis, next time you get a new car, do consider getting a hybrid, because it's so quiet. It doesn't disturb the birds much. Keep your windows partially open, because even that little noise of the window opening can be disturbing for the birds. Use binoculars through the windows if you can. Stay inside the vehicle. Be aware, because you see the birds move, you're tempted to just move after them, but there could be someone right behind you. There could be walkers, there could be bikers. Just be aware. And the best rule for all birders is be patient. And for final tips and takeaways, this image shows Mount Lemmon outside of Tucson, Arizona in early spring along a winding road bordered by snow-covered ground. On the left, the road curves gently and is naturally bare. To the right, a forested hillside rises, densely populated with tall, thin conifers with some leafless deciduous trees visible. So, if you're going to car bird, you want to research and plan, find that edge habitat, trick out your car so it's set up for you to be perfect for car birding for you, and bring your patience and optimism. This final image shows the North Cave Creek Road in Portal, Arizona, on a dusty, unpaved winding road lined with trees with green and yellowish foliage. The rugged mountains loom in the background under a dramatic sky filled with thick, dark gray clouds, indicating an approaching storm. Another wonderful place to car bird. Thank you very much for joining me. You can see my contact information on the bottom, and my website just below that. Happy car birding!